Myself Ashwini Kulkarni welcomes you all in my new video lecture of financial management. Student, in previous lecture we discussed the functions of financial management and we discussed about the definition of finance function and the classification of finance function. Okay, now in this video we can discuss the approaches to finance function and aims of finance functions. Okay, so let's start. Approaches to finance function. A number of approaches are associated with finance function, but for the sake of convenience, various approaches are divided into two broad categories. First, the traditional approach, and second, the modern approach. Okay. First one is traditional approach. Okay. Student, the traditional approach to finance function relates to the initial stage of its evolution during 1920s and 1930s, when the term corporation finance was used to describe what is known in the academic world today as the financial management. Okay. According to this approach, the scope of finance function was confined to only procurement of funds needed by business on most suitable terms. The utilization of funds was considered beyond the purview of finance function. It was felt that decisions regarding the application of funds are taken somewhere else in the organization. However, institutions and instruments for raising funds were considered to be a part of finance function. Okay, the scope of finance function the scope of finance function has now been discarded as it suffers from many serious limitations. Okay, so the limitations are: it is outsider looking in approach that completely ignores internal decision making, adds to the proper utilization of funds. Next, the focus of traditional approach was on procurement of long-term funds only. This, it ignored the important issue of working capital, finance and management. Next, the issue of allocation of funds, which is so important today, it's completely ignored. And last, it does not lay a focus on day-to-day financial problems of an organization. Therefore, traditional approach didn't used in this period. The modern approach can be used broader sense. Okay. Second one, the modern approach. The modern approach, students, views finance function in broader sense. It includes both raising of funds as well as their effective utilization under the purview of finance. Okay, the finance function does not stop only by finding out sources of raising enough funds. Their proper utilization is also to be considered. The cost of raising funds and the return from their use should be compared. Okay, the funds raised should be able to give more return than the cost involved in procuring them. The utilization of funds requires decision making. Okay. Finance has to be considered as an integral part of overall management. So, finance functions according to this approach covers financial planning, raising of funds, allocation of funds, financial control, etc. Okay. Student, the new approach is an analytical way of dealing with financial problems of a firm. Okay. The techniques of models, mathematical programming, simulations, and financial engineering are used in financial management to solve complex problems of present day finance. Okay, the modern approach considers um, the three basic management decisions. Okay, that is investment decision, financing decision, and dividend decision uh, within the scope of finance function. Okay, next is aims of finance function. ओके, फाइनेंस फंक्शन के एम्स क्या है, हमने क्या देखे, अप्रोचेस मीन्स कौन से ये अप्रोच है जिसमें हम फाइनेंशियल मैनेजमेंट जो है वो अप्रोच कर सकते हैं. ट्रेडिशनल अप्रोच है, मॉडर्न अप्रोच है. अब क्या देखेंगे हम, एम्स ऑफ फाइनेंस फंक्शन. क्या एम है फाइनेंस फंक्शन के? ओके, द primary aim of finance function is to arrange as much funds for the business as are required from time to time. Okay, this function has the following aims. Okay, first one is acquiring sufficient funds. The main aim of finance function is to assess the financial needs of an enterprise and then finding out suitable sources for raising them. Okay, the sources should be commensurate with the needs of the business. If funds are needed for longer periods, then long term sources like share capital, debentures, term loans may be explored. Okay, so first aim of finance function is acquiring sufficient funds. Okay, then a concern with longer gestation period should rely on more on owns fund instead of interested bearing securities, because profit may not be there for some years. Okay, so acquiring sufficient fund is the main function of finance. Okay, second one, proper utilization of funds. Students, though raising of funds is important, but their effective utilization is more important. The funds should be used in such a way that maximum benefits is derived from. Okay, the return from their use should be more than their cost. It should be ensured that funds do not remain idle at any point of time. Okay, the funds committed to various operations should be effectively utilized. Those projects should be preferred which are beneficial to business. Okay, so not only acquiring sufficient funds and raising of funds, but the proper utilization of funds is very much important function, important M of finance function. Okay, got it. Next one, third one, increasing profitability. Okay, um, the planning and control of finance function aims at increasing profitability of the concern. It is true that money generates money. Okay, to increase profitability, sufficient funds will have to be invested. Finance function should be so planned that the concern neither suffers from inadequacy of funds nor waste more funds than required. Okay, so मतलब ये भी नहीं चाहिए कि इनएडिक्वेसी भी नहीं होनी चाहिए, फंड्स में कम ज़्यादा भी नहीं होनी चाहिए और वेस्ट भी नहीं जानी चाहिए, ये देखना पड़ेगा. a proper control should also be exercised so that scarce resources are not frittered, okay, away from uneconomical operations. The cost of acquiring funds also influences profitability of the business. If the cost of raising funds is more than profitability will go down. Finance function also requires matching of cost and returns from funds. Okay. Lastly, fourth M, maximizing firm's value. A student finance function also aims at maximizing the value of the firm. Okay, it is generally said that a concern value is linked with its profitability. Even though profitability influences a firm's value, but it is not all. Besides profit, the type of sources used for raising funds, the cost of funds, the conditions of money market, the demand for products are some other considerations which also influence firm's value. Okay, मतलब सब प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी लिंक नहीं की गई है ये. बिसाइड्स प्रॉफिट्स, द टाइप ऑफ सोर्सेज ऑफ रेजिंग फंड्स, ये भी जो है वो फर्म्स वैल्यू में मैक्सिमाइजेशन कर सकते हैं. कौन से द कंडीशन ऑफ मनी मार्केट, द डिमांड फॉर प्रोडक्ट्स are some other considerations which also influences firm's value. Okay. Lastly, we discuss the functions of finance manager. तो फाइनेंस मैनेजर के क्या क्या फंक्शंस हैं वो हम देखेंगे. फर्स्ट वन है estimating the amount of capital required. Okay, this is a foremost function of finance manager. Business firms require capital for purchase of fixed asset, then require capital for meeting working capital requirements and modernization and expansion of business. Okay, किस के लिए चाहिए रहता है एस्टिमेशन. तो फिक्स एसेट परचेस करने के लिए, मीटिंग जो है वर्किंग कैपिटल रिक्वायरमेंट्स मीट होने के लिए, मतलब मैच होने के लिए, और एक्सपांशन ऑफ बिजनेस और मॉडर्नाइजेशन ऑफ बिजनेस के लिए एस्टिमेशन लगता है कैपिटल का, अमाउंट ऑफ कैपिटल. ओके, फाइनेंस मैनेजर मेक्स estimates of funds required for both short term and long term finance. Okay, and second, determining capital structure. Okay, once the requirement of capital funds has been determined, a decision regarding the kind of proportion of various sources of funds has to be taken. Okay, so कहाँ से ले जा सकते हैं funds, कैसे raise किए जा सकते हैं. For this, finance manager has to determine the proper mix of equity and debt and short term and long term debt ratio. This is done to achieve minimum cost of capital and maximize shareholders' wealth. Okay, so determining capital structure is also very important function of finance manager. Okay, first is estimating the amount of capital, then determining capital structure. Third one is choice of sources of fund. Okay, before the actual procurement of funds, the finance manager has to decide the sources from which the funds are to be raised. The management can raise finance from various sources like equity shareholders, preference shareholders, debenture holders, banks, and other financial institutions, public deposits, etc. ओके, सो चॉइस क्या होनी चाहिए, कहाँ से ये फंड्स की सोर्स जो है वो मिल सकती हैं. तो एक तो प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर से, इक्विटी शेयर होल्डर से, डिबेंचर होल्डर से, बैंक से, अदर फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन से, और पब्लिक डिपॉजिट्स से. ओके, नेक्स्ट वन इज procurement of funds. Another important function of finance manager is procurement of funds. Students, financial manager takes steps to procure the funds required for the business. It might require negotiation with creditors and financial institutions, issue of prospectus, etc. The procurement of funds is dependent not only upon cost of raising funds but also on other factors like general market conditions, choice of investors, government policies, etc. Okay, so procurement of funds is very much important function of finance manager, on which they can decide from where they can procure the funds. Okay, next one is utilization of funds. The funds procured by the finance manager are to be prudently invested in the various assets so as to maximize the return on investment. While taking investment decision, management should be guided by three important principles, that is safety, profitability and liquidity. Okay, so before utilization fund, finance manager has to follow the three important principles, okay, that is safety, profitability and liquidity. Okay, got it. Next one is disposal of profits or surplus. The finance manager has to decide how much to retain for plugging back and how much to distribute as divided to shareholders out of the profits of the company. The factors which influence these decisions include the trend of earnings of the company, the trend of the market price of its shares, the requirements of funds for self financing, the future programs, and so on. Okay, so disposal of profit is also the important aim, so the important function of finance manager. Next one is management of cash. Next function of finance manager is management of cash. Management of cash and other current assets is an important task of finance manager. It involves forecasting the cash inflows and outflows to ensure that there is neither shortage nor surplus of cash with the firm. Sufficient funds must be available for purchase of materials, payment of wages, and meeting day-to-day expenses. So management of cash is also very much important function of finance manager. And the last function of finance manager is financial control. Evaluation of financial performance is also an important function of finance manager. The overall measure of evaluation is return on investment. The other techniques of financial control and evaluation include budgetary control, cost control, internal audit, break-even analysis, and ratio analysis. The finance manager must lay emphasis on financial planning as well. Okay, so overall financial control is very much important function of finance manager. Okay, student, hope you all understand the approaches, aims and functions of finance manager. Okay, if you have any doubt, then please message me. I will definitely get back to you. Okay, uh, we will be meet shortly in my next video lecture. Till then, take care. Thank you.